Welcome everyone for Cloud Computing and Big Data. Today we have our lecture 10 already. So basically we have climbed already the big peaks of the course, and now we will have, let's say, interesting topics which are relevant for cloud computing, but very major topics you have already learned when you pass this particular course hours today. So congratulations for that. Basically, these are very many cloud topics that we have already being covered. And today we talk about software as a service, which is then the highest level, really, when you think about how you stack up cloud resources, how you use them then to create better platforms using the platform as a service notion. And of course, today we talk about softwares or applications where you just swipe your credit card and basically have a full cloud power. Hence, this will be less technical today because we build on the technicalities on the level of PAAS and infrastructure as a service. So let's go and look a little bit what we had then the last time in lecture 9, where we talked about the PAAS platform. And on top, as you know, being basically on top of the infrastructure as a service. So here we talked about that the PAAS analogy, if you want, that basically I put here a little bit, is the Lego bricks idea, right? So basically you have a very perfect infrastructure. It scales service, storage, computing, networking, also part of the infrastructure as a service. What you miss are higher level services, which are not directly an application. But when you put these different Lego bricks together, you can have a very nice application. And the benefit in this PAAS is basically really having a super support for components that you can put all like a Lego brick box, together in order to create a house, sometimes using the same Lego bricks to create a ship. And this is something which is very nicely supported today. You see that a little bit here in the development cycle, that you also have not only the perfect scalable infrastructure underneath, which we said was incredibly useful for games like Angry Birds that then scale with the users, right? Remember, the soccer game from them failed. So the infrastructure used 0, and suddenly Angry Birds really was perfectly working and exponentially increasing in users. So this is something where your infrastructure has to follow through. And if you put that in your own basement, chances are you take a couple of months to get a new server that really then is able to scale with the demand. Hence, using the cloud for these is basically modus operandi today. Also, the different versioning aspects, the rollout, as we discussed, on all the different devices today. We don't have just one iPhone today, right? Basically, we have lots of different mobile smartphones. We have lots of different devices, and all of this is usually very well supported, as well as languages, right? So developers are sometimes using C#, using basically Java. They have all the different ways. Some of them are rather in Python. And all of this can be nicely combined and is provided basically as part of the clouds. Obviously, that means also for the developers here and there has to be something to pay it, right? The services that you have on one layer up means we don't only pay for the services on the infrastructure, storage, compute, network. We also now have to basically pay the price for a billing service, for instance. Or as we have seen here, I think this is a very perfect example, because many of the apps you find today directly or indirectly use natural language processing. They use machine learning services. And you see many of them that are incredibly relevant, like speech-to-text, vision, so computer vision analysis, classification of images, etc. All of this you can reuse as building blocks for your particular application that you're going to build. And then with the different rollouts, the different versions, maintenance of this, the Google Cloud Platform was one example where this is quite running well. Today's we have not really discussed so much about the containers yet, so we'll come basically in one of the next course hours. But of course, this is also using heavily containerization, a topic we will talk then basically in one of the next lectures. It would be too much to put all inside, but it means partly you can also really nicely scale this up and down, and even enables here and there some portability of containers. But we will discuss it in an upcoming lecture. Another role which often plays on the PAAS level is data, storing data, but in a smart form. So you don't want to have maybe just an Oracle database, really fat, sitting somewhere, but for your game or for your whatever app you develop, a rather smart, lightweight database, which could be a NoSQL. NoSQL had many advantages, as we learned the last time. One of it is that's not really having a full schema, had not so much constraints with it. Very simple way of storing information, particularly if you have sort of unstructured data. right? If you have still the same information for everyone, name, credit card number, probably, phone number, etc., maybe for this an SQL database makes sense. But when you think about levels, when you think about different ways how users move differently to a level or whatever it is what you have in the app, different information needs to be stored temporarily, maybe what we also have seen in the memcache that was basically in lecture 9, right? So there are specific platform components again, and you can see that these NoSQL databases are like 10, 12, 14 in the open source space, but also when you look basically inside the space that you have already inside the platforms, you're very specific ones optimized for some, of course, that are available in Google or basically also in other cloud vendors. So very interesting machinery. If you have to develop that on your own all the time, then you basically have lots of things to do. There's open source software, but think about when you have deployed your own MongoDB, Cassandra or something, it doesn't scale, right? So you need the infrastructure on top, below it, to really scale up the database to many users, access at the same time, etc., plus security, etc. So this was basically just a, let's say, very small view on the PAAS, right? If you now have all the different PAAS components, I encourage you to look on the website. There are much more. Search, query, right? Plays a big role, obviously, in Google if you want to search for information in order to use it in your app. So all of these components you can nicely use in your application and build a higher level service that we have discussed, like Philips Hue for Lightning, if you remember. This is a perfect example. You never know what to expect. You never know where, in which room it will take, how the people are using it, often, less often, on which devices. Basically, they want to use it on a computer. Some maybe use a smartphone for it. So different front ends. So all of this is a very good example. And Angry Birds, of course, another one. And you can go on and go on. And if you go a little bit to the websites and see what kind of success stories and testimonials are there, you will see this is heavily used today. The only thing you have to make sure when you use this, put the prices of the infrastructure and from the platform into your application, right? The minute when the users swipe the credit card, you have to have in mind that €0.50 or €1 cost for an app might be not that smart, because you have a whole infrastructure to have basically also to be supported underneath. So basically put €1 for €2, look how the cost is on top of the app. And of course, it depends if you have in-app purchases, and you can go on and go on to this topic. But essentially, you have to always make sure to dump the prices also back to your customer, right? When you have then your real application developed. And this brings us basically seamlessly to the next layer I wanted to talk about today. It's the software as a service level. Needless to say, the highest stack here, as you would say, but changed, of course, the modus operandi, how basically software is accessed tremendously. I mean, some of you maybe still know stores like me, when we go and bought software, Microsoft Windows or so, literally physically in the store, right? Or games, Diablo 1 or something for a long time ago. Go to a store, get disks, and install it. So software as a service changed the paradigm of this. Basically, this is all basically history. Almost nobody is doing this anymore today. So we have everything virtually available as a software, or we can at least download the software virtually. And this is something where basically SaaS has put tremendous benefits to the software industry. I mean, needless to say, all the different versions that happens, right? If you have to do updates, you have to go to a vendor. Please give me an update for this software. You get another disk to install. Then there were CDs at some point in time that were a little bit things easier, and internet came along the way. And suddenly, nowadays, we have much more, let's say, streamlined way of using software, which is, I think, for computer science in generally a major breakthrough. However, coming a bit back to the clouds, how we realize this, we look at the different levels, but right now you have basically a view of this with IAAS, PAAS, and SAAS. We look still on some examples, which I pick from different fields, really to get you an idea what, of course, is really fueling cloud computing today. Where is the money, right, which is fueling the market? And of course, how the software development model today is really helping there with licensing, pricing, subscription models, a little bit on this. Also, we look briefly on the Amazon SageMaker, although many of you should basically soon get hands on it. As I said, it takes 3-4 days until you get basically the Studio Lab at your disposal, and then have to work on it, of course, on our assignment too. In the second part, I wanted to show some of the commercial aspects again with it. So why it is so successful. I picked a couple of applications. Of course, you could imagine everybody of us use a lot of SaaS services already. But here I picked some of them which, you know, have interesting topics to be discussed in terms of data loss concerns, in terms of how you make money with the cloud, like Google Ads and things like that. So these will be all topics here and there. We pick on future lectures again a little bit, but these are all very relevant when you basically are in this market. And Zoho, I don't know if someone of you used maybe Zoho, one service of it. There are lots of services. I use it, for instance, for CRM management. So this is an interesting cross-selling example by hand. It has tons of services, maybe 60, 70 services, one click away, which is one business model of the cloud. So understanding the SaaS benefits brings us again to our diagram that you already know. So I can go a little bit quicker. You know, the infrastructure as a service now, the base we always need, the platform basically where we bring the components together in order to create some higher level service, some software that is really ready to run, right? There's no development anymore needed. The only thing is get me a credit card because I want to charge you. That's a key idea of SaaS applications. And of course, some do this indirectly of saying Google Docs, well, is a SaaS application, but doesn't cost anything. Here you go, more storage, swiping credit card. Basically, the ads that you see there, someone else swiped the credit card for you. There's lots of business models behind that. So, and this brings us to the idea now to check which of those you already know. I guess someone of you has already used Google Docs. Is there someone who is not using Google Docs? This is a perfect example where lots of hidden treasures are also for revenue models of Google. But of course, it's a system that is brilliant, right? We're all using it daily. It scales massively. It's a perfect SaaS application. Then Zoho, I will show you a little bit, is a complete different paradigm, customer relationship management, not the same documents, but everything you can think about marketing, channel pipelining, leads, getting them for sales. So this is all beautiful supported in the Zoho stacks we will review. A totally different SaaS application. Then SharePoint, I think some of you probably also use this from the Microsoft environment here at the university, right? Another application also there, of course, maybe bought by an institution. But if you basically think about this, of course, also a big revenue model today for Microsoft. And you go on into Salesforce, there are lots of different examples that you have already used. And by this, we're extending the scope, essentially not much as you see from what we had before, was infrastructure as a service, platform as a service. Essentially, what we add to our concern is only we put all the development tools to a good purpose, develop a good application, and have a hosted application or app, which is then Zoho, Google, SharePoint. The benefit still is, it's what you see if you use Zoho or if you use SharePoint, essentially you should not have really bottlenecks in using it. You can create 100 documents, 200 documents in your Google Docs. It still scales nicely. You still can edit it if your internet connection is basically running well. Of course, if you have no internet or at your own breaks, then you're in trouble, right? This is nothing where the cloud is to be blamed. So looking at this from the traditional purpose level, you know, I said already at the beginning of the course, usually we have lots of different physical copies in the past. We go to stores, getting games like this, getting Microsoft Windows really physically, and then basically installed it, kept all the versions, updates, basically, again, in a new version from Windows 3.1 to Windows 3.2 and updates, etc. Nowadays, everything more easier. And with this, you basically switch also to a so-called multi-tenant architecture. So this disk or the CD that was basically sold is not only one owner anymore, but maybe basically many tenants are using the same software online. And this was another breakthrough of this virtualization, the benefit that you really have in basically using this. And also the idea of having basically the option of having certain beta testers that your friends that you invite to another version that is not really online yet, just restricted for some of them that can test the beta functionality and basically improve the product while the other one is running, right? There's also a very important part which you can do there. And it's really also, of course, used heavily with, you know, virtualization technology indirectly, but without virtualization, this would be hardly possible. Other examples are Freshworks CRM, we will also look into, but this is something where you really have, of course, on the one hand, also nice scalability for using this what you have in terms of applications. You don't care anymore physical copies, giving them to stores. You put it online and the users will come, right? So there's no limit in a way if your product is good, so to speak, in order to do this. Of course, your infrastructure has to follow suit, but this is what the cloud is really good in. Realize we have done this already in the virtualization lecture, is usually with horizontal scalability. So you have more and more of this virtual servers based on the virtual platform where your application is essentially hosted, as we say. And depending on how many basically users you have, you can always basically extend the underlying infrastructure without even basically have any exposure to the kind of users that you have or the application. Let's say you have a virtual solution A, might be your current version of the software, but your beta version of the next version is only accessible for a couple of them. And both of them you can shrink up and down as a requirement, as say. So this is, of course, new functionality, which is basically enabling lots of the successes of all of this. Some of you already know that maybe if you use some service, you can click what interested to be a beta user or something like this, get some discounts. And in SO, it's the same way. It's basically, if you use it every now and then, there's some basically invitations to be a beta tester to some modules. And then you are basically having the same look and feel, but you're on a different cloud part in the SaaS application space. Just one example how really the practice is basically changing in terms of software development, testing with end users, and so on. One example I pick here, and it's really, you can imagine, one out of many. We will talk about social networks and Facebook later in the course. So I took here something which is basically a market where lots of cloud applications make lots of revenues. So Salesforce, basically fresh sales, there are lots of these different clouds which are available, which are all on the market like Zoho, and they all have their unique selling proposition, but usually also do a whole lot of cross-selling. So once you're in Zoho, maybe do CRM, then you can do emailing service or advertising service. I show you in a moment. So all of these vendors, of course, have an idea to expand, although usually the specific cloud service provider would have some strong footprint in a very specific area. So one of it, as I said, is the customer relationship management. So manage all your customers. That is not just a database with names and telephone numbers. This has a whole sales path to a person, from lead to first contracts, to basically maintenance contracts. It has a whole way of how you deal with customers. Today, we have even machine learning on it, so you can learn from existing customers what could be potential new ones and what you have to say in the next part. And I'll show you some examples later on. Hence, what you have as a SaaS application, you improve your business relationship with these persons tremendously. And with this have, of course, much more revenues because you can do also easier cross-selling around. And here's some of them which basically are very well known. As I say, Zoho is very known. Freshworks is beautiful, I have to say, very well known as well. And of course, a very lively market. Some disappear, some are bought by others, but also extending heavily into other markets through this cross-selling. So the other one, enterprise resource planning, we talk about a bit later, but this is much more about managing all the resources, all the people, all basically the processes you really have in an organization, right? From the transport, manufacturing, maybe checking errors, shipping, payment, whatever it is. These are basically two of the very hard ones where lots of money is inside, right? So this is crucial for big applications and also crucial for large organizations that really need to have CRM systems in place and ERPs. So hence you have this idea of basically understanding the revenue a little bit. And you see here just the market revenue, which is a bit older in 2011. I should update this a little bit, sorry. It's probably much more these days. It's $3.8 billion, right? So just for this SaaS application in CRM, in the market of CRMs. And you can expect that today this is even more skyrocketing. And the way how it works is basically having many of these processes that otherwise would be in different software. You would have a contact manager, you would have maybe a kind of product manager for your own products and see where they are. You have an advertising, manager, which is all different software, but here you use them all at once together, right? And it's basically beautifully supported to have not only the scalability always with more and more customers, more and more products. You also have the whole history, the basically interconnections between all of these different areas, which are basically needed to make revenue. right? In former times, people have open on their desktop maybe 3, 4 applications and would say, I have to phone this person, so I have to open the contact manager to get the product to sales. Now you basically click on a person, have the available products, everything integrated. Seems easy to you now, of course, but this is, when you look at these and dive into these systems, really tremendously supported in terms of business processes. So you don't have to think anymore, what would be my next step with a customer? This is all already done. Yeah, you have to just fill it with your own idea what the product is, of course, what you sell. That's still what the systems can't do for you, but at least they can basically have these processes already defined and used. So here's one example. I said for the sake of variety, also here Freshworks now, not always so. You see here very nicely supported. This is a kind of person that we want to call. Maybe we know exactly where he is. Even we maybe find out he's online. We can have with one click a call. We have certain scores done by machine learning. We have the whole history of his purchasing, behavior in the past. So we can have all information directly, basically, in one go. And we can click on it. And we see here also one way, which is quite nicely for the machine learning part that we hit here, we can actually do also intelligent assistance. So we would have an AI-powered assistant that analyzes the behavior and gives suggestions. So think about, you are in the phone call. In previous times, you have like sheets of paper. I want to ask him this. If he says no, then we maybe have this product of interest. This is all then automated with a high probability, because machine learning learns, of course, from the customers in the past, not only from one customer, probably from your whole customer base. Here you go, you click, yes, I want to have this AI-powered intelligent assistant. What you guess, what you have to do, not swiping the credit card because your credit card is already in, but you have an added value of the price. And with this, you can imagine it goes to some regions where it's also, of course, a bit scary for some. Hence, we have to also later talk about a little bit the data security. You can imagine that recruiting today is not basically looking on your CV only or the things you put. They have these systems in place with one click, get all access to your Facebook profile, LinkedIn profile, Twitter tweets, everything which is related to you. This is one example from one of my colleagues here in the HR department. And I black here out the most things, but you know exactly what basically this person is doing privately every time, every single moment. Hence, we're getting more, glass, as we call it, glass on the user here in Germany. It's a very security concern also for your privacy. Hence, be careful what you put online. These systems are incredibly good in this already. And there's certain deals, of course, with Facebook and with others in place where you have to be careful what you share online. Can be very easily with 1 or 2 clicks in the modern systems aggregated together, and from this put to machine learning and then put to a personal profile under this, and so on and so on. I stop here not to make you too much scared. I think some of you will still get very good jobs, no matter if you have a beer, sometimes drinking and be a little bit on a picture, maybe drunk. That's not it, but think about really these systems are incredible effective these days. Then again, when you think about the delivery model, of course, we have now to think that there are kind of different views on this. So one is, of course, a software user perspective. For us, it's quite nice. We have just a thin client, not to install this and this and this. We have a browser in most of the cases, maybe a small desktop application for data transfer also alongside it. This is very beautiful, not anymore so hard on it. From the software provider perspective, you don't have to have any more boxes with real CDs put into stores and then ask the store, please, would you actually sell my software? And you get some offs from that. Today, basically, we know the internet is very strong. We can all basically go there and then go to the CRM system we use. Of course, they have also things in place which they try to hook you here, basically have $300 for free if you take the first month, but you have to still give your credit card. And then you test another service, you forget to pull out your credit card, and they charge you after a month suddenly. And then sometimes even hard to get the money back. So of course, here also be careful where you enroll all the time. After some time, they start charging you, and try to basically shut down the things you test again, because in one respect, they can change also their ideas how they operate, and then suddenly charge you for services which were initially for free. Right? This is also something which is sometimes happening. Usually you have to press agree on the new terms, but still these are possibilities. Hence, There are lots of possibilities to hook you with discounts. On the other hand, also think about when you have a new version coming out, or basically this idea of subscription for a year. How perfect is this, right? In former times, you had Windows, and you maybe the next time want to buy something else and want to have a Linux derivative or whatever. You basically go there and have hard time to get the customer again to you, maybe. And here you just basically have this automatic renewal. People don't think about this anymore usually, right? There's an automatic renewal coming. Okay, it costs money, but everything is so automated that, of course, keeping your customer base is easier today than ever, also because of the SaaS model, which is, of course, a big benefit for software providers. So you see, in a one respect, it's always depending on the view where you're going. What is related to this is, of course, a good infrastructure underneath and the good platform services we say. One thing is, for instance, monitoring. Is your service still, fast? If you click on a CRM and you want to have a contact, you immediately want to call him. This must be very quick. We call this service level agreements, where you say, well, it should be a very, let's say, high response time of the service. Hence, here's, of course, also the idea that when it's a very tariffal service, bad performance, you can tell them and basically get possibilities that with monitoring this SLA, they breached the contract by having not really a good response time. The data to be basically stored, to be used, must have some certain security consideration. The Garmin incident with the watches, right, which was hacked and suddenly put everywhere outside. So these are all concerns now which come with this new model too. This was not existing when you maybe was in a physical world with your Microsoft 3.1. Hence, there are also certain drawbacks, or if you want, this quality of service measures today are more important than ever. And one of it is, of course, the service, let's say, the service quality, but also then the service quality has to reflect what's underneath in the infrastructure. Is it responsive? Is it good enough? Is it scaling with the users? Before, this was a problem of the user, right? If you buy Windows 3.1 and you had a Commodore 64 or 64, it probably will not work very well. So the infrastructure was your concern. Now, because you let the credit card swipe, it's a concern of the software provider. Hence, this changed. But of course, with this, you need some models in place, and this is the service level agreements where you agree with your customers or your service providers on the lower level, right? Chances are that you create a software, an application, but you rely on a platform like Google, you rely on Amazon Web Services infrastructure, but you can make them, also pay if they don't follow suit with the performance. So you have SLAs in place. Usually, from my experience with the big hyperscalers, this is 99% performance, right? So, but if you do niche market vendors here and there, this could be an issue. A whole weekend, suddenly our service went off, water damage. Okay, and your app is not working a whole weekend, so many subscriptions lost. Then you can go back, and sometimes you have to use lawyers and get your money back, at least partially for this dropout period. And these are the SLAs that needs to be in place to make these stacks happening, from infrastructure platform to software as a service on the one hand, so the different providers, and then to the different users on the other hand. Then looking how you wait to, get upstreaming, downstreaming, cross-selling. There are different licensing of software. I think probably everybody of you has already used some of these license models. I just put here some examples in Soho, free, standard, professional, more users, more space, more data. I think all of you have basically enrolled in some of these cloud models where you can then, of course, pick what suits you in this different licensing model. Also quite nice now for software providers. They just unlock in the software a bit more functionality. You don't have to go again to the store and buy now Windows Professional instead of Windows Standard. So all of this changed dramatically in the past. And basically the freemium example is another one where you basically start for free for this free trial. Then you are hooked. You use the service for 15 days and then maybe continue using it. This is something always you have to think about when you're using these kind of models. Of course, the idea is to hook you to a service and that you keep you in this, right? And many people are just providing them the credit card, leave the service, use another one, and charging starts. That's an important part. And SageMaker, just to finish on basically our assignment here for the first course hours, is another interesting example. You will see when you do your assignment, suddenly you get always things like, when you have, the Studio SageMaker Studio, then essentially what you get in Amazon is like 30 euros discount, $30 discount, $50 discount. This is all integrated. You will see that, but if you click it, you have to provide the credit card, right? It's a nice service, but of course, a complete SaaS application that has to make revenues and has always side steps to other interesting services where you have to pay for. Let's basically summarize this a little bit, because this is what you will also see a little bit in the assignment. I think because of the registration, nobody has started yet with the assignment, right? But if you basically please could start this, it would be good, at least the first task, right? Register to the studio. It will take 4 or 5 days before you get the account. And basically the underlying cost of the SaaS is of course also something to think about, depending on, with SageMaker, if you want to do deep learning, then we need GPUs. And in the free version in your assignment, that's easy. But basically, if you go to the, production version, you then have to pick which of those servers you want to have. And, it could be a difference from $6 to $26 per hour. Of course, depending on what models you want to train, if you want to do cutting edge deep learning, it will be very costly. Hence, this is also on a different level with the infrastructure, but affects the software as a service model immensely. Let's summarize this a little bit with another one, Salesforce, that basically many of you know that already, work.com and some, maybe for task tracking and people tracking and stuff. Otherwise, it's one of Trello, similar in one respect. They all share certain commonalities.
Today's new normal demands a new way to work. Work.com, built on Salesforce Customer 360, can help your business adapt to new needs and build trust with the suite of applications, best practice resources, and services. Now HR, IT, operations, and other business leaders focused on workplace resilience can leverage Work.com to help build that resilience and trust for today and be ready for whatever tomorrow brings. You can understand your organization's readiness to operate safely and how to support your employees' needs as they work from anywhere. With the Workplace Command Center, you can gain access to an integrated view of workforce wellness and readiness data for better visibility and use tools to take action across workplace locations. You can learn how employees are doing, whether they're working from home or in the office. Organizations can use Wellness Check to send wellness surveys to employees and help identify needs, understand employee satisfaction, and help the business operate safely. That wellness data can be acted on, for example, to make scheduling adjustments if an employee isn't feeling well. And if an issue or health risk is reported by an employee, you can act quickly. With manual contact tracing, you can track health-related interactions. To help everyone stay safe, businesses can also offer employees access to services and tools that promote happy, informed, and productive employees. You can use push notifications to notify employees when there are new tools available, device upgrades, or security policies. And you can use chatbots to more quickly connect employees with important information. Employee activity can trigger the creation of new service tickets, which IT can view and collaborate on to help improve productivity. With Work.com, employees can also access a central workspace for information, support, apps, and workflows from anywhere. Employees can get self-service assistance and chat to answer questions quickly, so they can go about their day and stay productive. And employees can learn new skills and get up to speed on company policies and new ways to work with fun, gamified learning experiences built on My Trailhead, the Salesforce learning platform. When you're ready to reconnect and build trust with customers, you have what you need for success. With broadcast messaging, it's easier to share information through preferred channels like SMS. You can use AI-powered chatbots to help answer customers' questions and connect with them faster. Businesses can share important information easier with trust cards. Here, customers can learn how you are protecting employee and customer safety, which can help your customers feel safe and confident. When customers want to visit your workplace, Queue Management can help them join a virtual line from anywhere so they can avoid crowds. And working together, you can use Queue Management and broadcast messaging to let customers know when they're next in line. And just like that, Work.com can help you work in today's new normal and be ready for whatever tomorrow brings. That's the power of Work.com from Salesforce.
All right, sure. As usual, you know, I'm not paid by them, but I think I picked this example on purpose a little bit also to show you this idea of you're tracked everywhere. Everything you're doing, suddenly you get a message by the company and say, why you look so much on Facebook over the day? Everything is tracked, right? It's an example, even what I know from a real company, right? Tracking where, on which websites you are every single day. And they have this interesting tool which does it on one click and analyzes this. So we're going to a dangerous future partly. That's one part of the message. It's glorious because we have all service abundant directly at one click, but it enables also lots of interesting moves where we are really monitored 24/7 a day.